Hello and welcome to Film Obsessed. With the release of Alien Romulus, I am ready to take on ranking every single Alien franchise film. I'm going to run through each and explain my feelings on them to give the rank. If you are someone who has seen all 9 films in the franchise, or at least most of them, let me know down below in the comments and what your rank of them would be, and give this video a like and subscribe. I'm trying to build a film community on this channel, and I really appreciate your support as we run through the video. Without further ado, sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and let's jump right into it. So I think it's pretty fair that we start with the original Alien and go through each movie by release date all the way up until Alien Romulus. So let's talk about Alien 1979. This is a movie I actually recently rewatched again to prepare to see Alien Romulus. And I have to say, it holds up a little less on a rewatch, but at the same time, you would be crazy to say that this is not arguably the best one in the franchise. What it did back in 1979 was a revelation in how much it changed the landscape of film. Visually speaking, it is a technical marvel and one that holds up very well on certain aspects with how it utilizes production design. It does have some dated qualities, but for what they were able to do back then, it was just amazing. I also applaud Ridley Scott and the actors for bringing their all into it, and I'm sure that they did not know if it would be this well received and iconic to this day. A movie about a spaceship crew coming across an alien species that, when let loose, tortures them in every way that feels so condensed and suspenseful. Sigourney Weaver spawned one of the most recognizable characters in history with Ellen Ripley, when she wasn't even considered the main lead of that film at the time. I don't think the movie is totally perfect like some have said, and it's more like a 4.75 out of 5 kind of movie for me if I was using that rating. Although when looking at the tier list that we are using here, it will easily go in the S tier because it is one of the top 3 best of this franchise. Next up, we have probably the best one of the franchise, at least in my personal opinion, and that is James Cameron's Aliens. I don't think it even needs to be questioned at this point, but this is one of the greatest action films ever made. Again, like I said with Alien, it does have some dated qualities visually, but it is so great how James Cameron was able to utilize awesome production design and budget to condense it down so that it is as memorable as it was. It is paced very well, directed very well, features awesome action and badass moments from our characters, including Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley again. It gives us one of the greatest animatronic creations in history with the alien Xenomorph Queen, and story-wise, it's just a great sequel to a beloved classic. It is a 5 out of 5, and it is at the top of the S tier for me on my list as my favorite in the series. If this was the kind of movie that was made next after Alien Romulus, then I will be all the way there for that. Next up on the list, we've got David Fincher's Alien 3, arguably one of the craziest stories for a movie in the history of Hollywood. If anybody here knows just how insane it was back in the day when this movie was at least trying to get made, I definitely implore you to go and watch some YouTube videos out there that have explored that very thing. The fact that a filmmaker like David Fincher, of all people, is someone who made this movie is insane to think about because it does not really feel like a movie of his, at least with regards to the recent stuff that he's made. Story-wise, I'm not exactly sure I remember this movie well enough to consider it anywhere near close to the top of my list. Visually speaking, it is a massive step down from the previous two. I don't think it is as directed well, the characters are not as memorable or written well, and I think the whole ending with what happens with Ellen Ripley and how she dies is honestly probably not the best direction that they could have gone down. Like I said, this movie was just a massive mess that I recommend you go and research just how bad it was. The great Chris Stuckman has made a video about this, so he's probably the first person I would recommend you go and watch for it. In terms of where I put it on my list, it is going comfortably in the C tier, probably at the bottom. We next up have the abomination known as Alien Resurrection. Now, I will say, the only thing that this movie does better than Alien 3 is that I can say it is a little bit more fun than Alien 3 was. Although a lot of the fun in this movie is done way cheesier than what you would have seen the past 3 films go by, from a story perspective at the time, this was probably the worst of the 4, I think. Everything around the idea of Ellen Ripley as a clone, the whole newborn Xenomorph type that was introduced in one of the most disgusting and terrible looking things I've ever seen. The cast was actually pretty decent, all things considered, with people like Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman being added into it, but that just wasn't enough to save the movie, as being probably for some people the worst of the franchise. For me personally, Personally, it is not, but it is definitely at the bottom, as I'm going to put this in the D tier on my list. And so now we move over to the more modern stuff, as I'm actually going to do what other people probably haven't done on their lists, and I'm going to include the Alien vs. Predator films, and this is where we now start with the 2004 film. Again, from a certain perspective, I would say that this movie was probably the one that was more fun than the last two combined, but story-wise, it is all over the place. I certainly don't have anything against doing crossover kind of movies, but this one fails in so many areas. It is at times super silly and laughable with the dialogue and the action and sound effects and how it's shot. It just feels like a movie that was put in the hands of a filmmaker and studio who didn't understand how to make a good crossover. Again though, I do think that this movie was a lot more fun than the last two films, and I'm going to put it in C tier just above Alien 3 because of that reason. Alien vs. Predator Requiem. I think I can happily and kindly put straight into the damn F tier, as we are not even going to debate about this. This movie is horrible in every way possible. Terrible characters, terrible dialogue, actors who are just not that good, directing that is so flimsy and messy with how it's shot. 90% of the movie is done in the dark and you can't even see anything happening. It has a few interesting premises with the whole alien predator, but they ultimately go nowhere in what feels like a story so dumb and rushed that this movie shouldn't even have existed in the first place. The studio probably just wanted to bank off another crossover film that is a sequel to the previous one based off the story of how that movie ended. So yeah, it's going right in the F tier. There is no debate here. This is the worst film in the franchise for me. Now it's time to get to the more recent modern films as we go to Prometheus. Now, I'll be completely upfront with this one. At the time of when this movie came out, I had gone into an age of where I had started watching more R-rated films with this kind of subject matter. I hadn't seen any of the other Alien movies yet, and so at the time, this was actually my favorite. I think the narrative still stands for me, as this is probably in my top 5, maybe my 4th favorite film. There's something about the way that Ridley crafted a world in this movie with being a prequel film to all the other Alien movies, where I was very interested in what he was trying to do. I don't think everything in the story works in this movie, although it is definitely one of the more interesting plots of any Alien film. Everything behind the engineers and this film depicting the first showing of an alien xenomorph is pretty cool, but again, not everything works. I don't really care too much for a lot of the characters in the movie besides David, who is the android, and it is filled with really dumb character decisions. Visually, it is definitely one of the best in the franchise, so I will give it that. With that in mind though, I think I will put this movie in the B tier, just high enough to where I may give it like a B+. Next, we have Alien Covenant, which is actually the first one that I ever got a chance to see in theaters to this day, and I'm definitely semi in the minority on this one. I don't dislike the movie, however, it is also not a good movie either. I think the things that were not good about Prometheus were brought over into this movie and done worse. Way more dumb character decisions, a story that doesn't feel as tight as it should be given how many things it focuses on, and then visually, I would actually say this one is a little lesser than Prometheus. I think a movie like this had great potential, but it just didn't fully work out, as I think that Ridley Scott started to lose his grasp on what he was trying to communicate within his story. Grade-wise, I would probably either give it a B- or a C+, but I think there was just not enough in it to warrant that higher grade, so it's going to be at the top of C tier for me. And last but not least, we have Alien Romulus, the newest film of which I'm going to get it out of the way and say that this is going to be at the top of A tier on my list. I really like this movie, and at times almost thought that it did certain things better than the original two did. It's not totally all the way there based on certain story elements and character decisions, but everything about this movie just speaks to me about things that I love. It's got awesome production design, practical effects, and great visuals that show an awesome level of cinematography. I think Fede Álvarez directed the hell out of it by giving it a very condensed original feeling to what we are known for seeing in the original two movies, but also putting the actors in positions for me to care about certain characters even if I didn't care about every single one. Characters like Rain and Andy, played by David Johnson and Kaylee Spaney, are now two of my favorites in the franchise, and overall, I just think that this movie really gave me a great time in the theater, which is what I'm always looking for in a movie. I've already made enough videos about this movie on my channel to give my thoughts, so if you want to go check them out, I definitely recommend. But those are my thoughts with regards to ranking it on my list. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my ranking of the entire Alien franchise. Leave your comments down below about what you think about my list and where you would rank the movies. If you want to see more moving forward from me on this channel with regards to film and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and also subscribe if you are new here and turn on that notification bell to be updated for when I upload again. So yeah, that's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon. for the next video.